Welcome to another episode of The Dissection. The CEO of the Independent Development Trust, Tebogo Malaka, is having a week from hell. She's going to be remembered for her bribe blundering behavior. She's going to be the first person who is remembered for bribe blundering behavior. BBB. She attempted to bribe a journalist from the Daily Maverick with 60,000 Rand only to stop an explosive story about her property dealings coming out. 60,000 Rands. I'm just trying to rationalize the courage, the chutzpah, which came with this idea. So the meeting to attempt to bribe the journalist from Daily Maverick took place on Sunday. Mkwanazi is using Sundays to expose syndicate, expose funny relationships between politicians and people who are alleged criminals. But not the CEO of IDT. She's using her Sundays for bribe blundering behavior. It's incredible the stories that we're hearing. It's incredible the stories that we're hearing. So the story broke yesterday on the 6th of August. And today on the 7th of August, the Minister of Public Works has opened a criminal case against Tebogo Malaka. Her week has gone from bad to worse, to the toilet, to the sewage. She is swimming in it right now. This is what the minister said.
I can therefore confirm that earlier, short while ago, I formally opened a criminal case against the suspended Chief Executive Officer of the Independent Development Trust, Mr. Tebogo Malaka, and the IDT spokesperson, Mr. Pasha Magalan, at the Cape Town Central Police Station. These allegations remain deeply disturbing. They, in my view, are not just a criminal act, but an assault on the institutional framework of government to provide services to the people of South Africa, especially in the social infrastructure space that the IDT is responsible for.
I don't know who's had a worse year this year, whether it's the Minister of Google and Bubblegum, Minister of Encyclopedia, former minister now, who is now chewing bubblegum at ANC events and at ANC meetings, but no longer as a cabinet minister. So that's the first contender. But I think up there with the main contenders for blunder of the year has to be the CEO of bribe blundering behavior herself, Tebogo Malaka. I mean, this is incredible. You know, I've been thinking that this lady must have been tempted to get into the corruption game later in life. She didn't read her Proverbs 1, which told her, my son or daughter, stay away from those who come and say, let us plot to do this evil behavior. No, she was like, nah, the Bible was just telling lies. Those were just suggestions. And she went straight into the plotting, and now they've caught her. I really think she got into this late in life. I don't think that she's a day one corruption individual because she has no experience doing this bribe thing. First, to do this bribe thing, this is the formula. Let me tell you the formula. Not that I'm recommending this behavior, but what I've observed. First, you have to be a member of a big church political party. You have to be a member of a big church political party. And you have to be in good standing. Then you have to make donations to the party. Make sure that your donations to the house, the headquarters of the party, are large and well known, that you are buying those tables at the golf days and all of that. You need to be going to gala dinners. And when there's a conference coming up, you definitely need to be making serious contributions to the party, right? That's how you get the party to protect you. That's number one. Then number two, you have to advertise in those media houses. Get your organizations to advertise in those media houses. Make donations to independent journalism. Make donations to independent journalism. If you do those things, you'll be all right. If money is found in your couch, or if a police general says that you're sending messages to dubious chaps about task teams that the police should only be knowing about or operating without your interference, the media, if you've done those steps, will not energetically investigate those issues. You may still be somebody who will still be going to party meetings even after allegations about you are known by the public. Right? You need to be tactical. You can't just take a simple, mere, thin 60,000 rands to cover up corruption, which is approaching 900 million rands. What are we doing here? This is some rookie behavior. She needed to be studying the book of Edwin Sodi, the book of the real horse curry daddies out here. This is not how you do it. But we must be grateful for her blunder, because we are now getting reminders and clues and case studies of actually how the tender economy works, how this tender entrepreneurship works, and what are the problems with it. Because it's not just a case of black excellence. It's not just a case of us now criticizing black entrepreneurs. We're actually getting an inside look at the horse curry behavior that is destroying South Africa or contributing to the destruction of South Africa. What's also interesting about her story is that this actually is a horse curry mama. She's a horse curry mama. She's doing some of these activities in her own name. This is feminism in the horse curry behavior. Sisters looting for themselves, I tell you. Sisters looting it for themselves. We're seeing a lot. So let's talk about the context of the story and reflect on what the patterns are. The IDT spends over 4 billion rands each year on social infrastructure projects like building schools and clinics. So it's an important entity. The Independent Development Trust was acting as the project manager for the Department of Health, and it was the one that appointed private contractors to install these oxygen plants at 55 government hospitals. The project was ultimately valued at 836 million, and the majority of the funds were allocated to an obscure company that lacked the appropriate accreditation to be doing this type of work. So the money came from the Global Fund, which is funded by governments and civil society organizations globally. It's an organization which financed the project to install these PSA oxygen plants at 55 hospitals across South Africa. So the Global Fund donates 10 billion rands every 3 years to South Africa. And this particular money and the commitments were made during the COVID-19 pandemic. A target was set to acquire oxygen plants for South African hospitals when it became apparent that the facilities had run out of oxygen. So what you need to know about these PSA oxygen machines is that they are based on what is known as pressure swing adsorption technology, right? PSA technology, which is designed to produce high purity oxygen from ambient air using pressure swing adsorption technology. This ensures that there's a continuous and reliable supply of oxygen, making it ideal for hospitals that require a consistent and efficient oxygen source for some of their patients. So by generating oxygen on site, this significantly reduces costs which are associated with traditional oxygen supply methods. This was the idea. It's a good idea. It's a cost-saving idea. Great. So initially, the Department of Health costed this project and determined that it would cost 256 million rands. So it's clear that the ultimate figures that were allocated were a gross overinflation. And in fact, if the money had not been looted or the codes had been accurate, you could have even supplied over 150 hospitals with the amount of money that they are now spending on the ones that didn't even get delivered for the 55 hospitals, this 836 million. So it's clear that the costing ended up creeping exorbitantly into the wrong direction because the use of middlemen, multiple middlemen, ends up making these costs shoot up unreasonably. And that's something that actually the state should look into, and these type of procurements should be done directly. Treasury should buy these machines, they should be sent to the hospitals, and then you hire people to come and install them and maintain them. Not this whole thing of we're going to do a tender, then these companies are going to go buy the equipment, then they're going to tell us that the equipment costs this much, then they're going to find another entity that can actually install the equipment because they don't even know what they're doing because they don't even have the accreditation. This is all a mess. So the big red flag was that the company that won, which is known as Bulk ENG, right? They lacked accreditation as a supplier of medical products. They didn't have this accreditation. By the way, there was another tender which was allocated during the pandemic for the fumigation of schools. And the companies that won those tenders also didn't have accreditation as suppliers of medical products or anything to that effect. They were just in there fumigating these schools. I think 400 million rands was spent on that project. And then later on, questions were being asked about were these companies accredited. Some of them were opened at the beginning of the pandemic were already winning the contract, and it was just a disaster. So this company didn't have the registration, but the bid documents actually stipulated that contractors needed to be registered with the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority. So these guys were not even registered. They didn't have any credentials from the health authority. The other company that was part of winning the tender is a company which is known as Mazia. Mazia is a company that regularly wins government contracts and has also been appointed to do demolition work at the National Assembly, which has been ravaged by a fire, as you recall, or was ravaged by a fire in 2022. Now, this particular entity, the reports indicate that it has been fined by the Competition Commission for tender collusion relating to a city power contract. And further reports indicate that some of the company's past government projects were allegedly mired by significant cost overruns. So cost overruns, big thing. Lack of accreditation, big thing. Tender collusion, big thing. It's clear from this story about the IDT CEO, several things. Number one, these companies should be vetted before any awarding of tenders. They should have the right certificates, and they should have actually a long history of trade in that particular industry, and perhaps even recommendations from industry experts and operators. We can't just be having hoshkari behavior of this nature. These companies, if we're not going to get rid of the tender system, these companies need to be vetted robustly. Number two, companies that have been implicated in overcharging should be blacklisted from doing any business with the government whatsoever. If you overcharge once, you should just be, that's enough. It can't even be a 3 strikes and you're out. Overcharging, especially when we're getting to levels where 300% of the cost overrun, that's way too much. These companies, this is, by the way, not specifically these interventions, but the first, is it Prime Minister or President of Singapore? He was very strict about companies that did business with government. And as a result of the strictness, those companies were actually able to deliver quality services to the people of Singapore. Corruption was low, and that's something that's necessary. Number 3, there should be a public review system, online, accessible by anybody, of any company that has done work for government. And that it should be reviewed, just like Uber, 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, and the reviews should be public, like Yelp, like Take-A-Lot, like Amazon reviews. The company should be reviewed for quality of work by government officials, for the cost of projects, whether they completed the project on time, but also reviewed by civilians who are using those facilities, whatever that project is. That should be publicly known, so that if a company wins a tender, we go check online and we're like, but this is a 1-star company. Why is it getting a tender? Let's improve the system. Number 4, owners and shareholders of any company that is doing business with the state should be publicly listed. All of the owners, shareholders, beneficiaries, whoever's getting a dividend, there should be maximum transparency so that you reduce hoshkari behavior. There's too much hoshkari behavior in the system, right? Number 5, this is something that's very important, and I think will work to solve the problem. Give General Mkhwanazi a budget to investigate these hoshkari mamas and hoshkari fathers. Set up the HKBI, Hoshkari Behavior Investigating Department. I'm telling you, you set that up, you solve 99.9%. Once they know Mkhwanazi is on the job, they're not going to play games no more. So there's another story in KZN also, which I think fits in quite well with this discussion about corruption, hoshkari behavior, and what lessons we can learn here. And that story is what has been happening with the school nutrition program and the tenders there. Almost 3 billion rands, which is going to be allocated to tenders for the school nutrition program in KwaZulu-Natal. And many ANC politicians have been implicated in this. We've got some examples about the role of family members in KZN in winning these tenders. It's worth talking about them and clarifying. So there's an almost 3 billion school nutrition tender. It caters for the poor schools in KwaZulu-Natal, and there's been a lot of reporting around the politicians from the ANC who stand to benefit directly and indirect from this particular school nutrition program and its tenders. A number of family businesses linked to ANC leaders in KZN stand to benefit. So one of the implicated politicians is a deputy minister of labor, right? A company that was formed by the labor and employment deputy minister, Jomo Sibiya, who is apparently one of President Cyril Ramaphosa's closest allies, also is a company that was a beneficiary, but now they've withdrawn their bid for the tender. after the reporting emerged. So the company is known as Sesi Pambili Trading. It was registered by Sibiya in 2008, and it's been in the name of his wife since 2021. So started in 2008, been under his wife's name since 2021. So that's one of the companies which was standing to win, but it has now withdrawn its bid application. Another implicated politician is the provincial education MEC himself, Sipho Muga. Think about this. The food and nutrition, school nutrition program, not food and nutrition, school nutrition program is under the oversight of the MEC, right? Directly, indirectly, but it is under his oversight. He's the education MEC. Chigi, your wife is there getting the tenders. So he registered a company which is known as Apikuku in 2015. And that company now is currently under the control of his family members. It's one of those that won tenders under the KZN school nutrition program. Another implicated politician is KwaZulu-Natal ANC heavyweight Thandukolo Sabelo. So polygamy actually makes a feature in this story because Mr. Sabelo unestembu. Unestembu Sabelo. He has two wives. His two wives tend to benefit from this 2.9 billion nutrition tender in KwaZulu-Natal. And when he was asked about it, he was like, listen, guys, my wives have been in business for many years. Also, why are you trying to collapse me? This is an attempt to collapse me, to get me down. This is what he was saying in media and in posts that have been deleted on Facebook. So 3 major ANC politicians, spouses, getting tenders, they all say, well, my family member, they're just doing business in their own name. What's the problem? Even the son of Gwere Mantashe was saying, so is it a crime to be son of Gwere Mantashe? I can't be son of Gwere now. I'm qualified to be a chairperson of these CETA boards. There are multiple ethical issues here, and I don't think actually that family members of politicians should actually be in business with government at all, in any shape or form. You want to do business, strictly private sector, no government contracts whatsoever. The conflict of interests are too high, and the risks of it becoming, political favoritism, kickbacks, cronyism, they're too high. We can't have any of this happening in reality. So from these stories, and even the Katiso Molefe story, the Transnet story, if you think about all of the allegations, if they are all valid, what we can really see is that, one, people are opening companies that are not operational all the time and are being opened with the purpose of pursuing tenders. People are opening, even the lottery story. The entity that ended up winning that lottery contract had been set up at a certain time, which it wasn't always in the gambling industry, etc. So in and of itself, that is something that you need to be aware of. Every time I say in and of itself, I always just wince a little bit internally because Sol Penduga said I said in and of itself too much on Twitter. I don't know if I do. I don't know if you've observed that, but if I need to switch it up. Use notwithstanding. Other phrases that will have the same effect. But I like in and of itself. In and of itself. I like it. Anyway. We know that people are opening companies that quickly get onto the vendor lists. We know that there are companies now which are being operated by the relatives of politicians who are sometimes very close to the bids that are being won or the sectors where the bids are being won. We know that these companies are winning contracts, they're overcharging, under-delivering. We know that individuals are willing to take out whistleblowers or to bribe journalists. Even the botched bribe is an indicator that, there's an understanding that you can't necessarily try to do some of this stuff. And, there's a conversation that has emerged about journalists taking bribes, etc., etc. Many journalists will not come forward and say that, yeah, it's us or whatever. But it seems as if there's an understanding that in these big media houses, some of the people are taking bribes because, Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, who has been a politician and would have maybe become aware of some of this stuff, was saying that they know that journalists are taking bribes. I don't know if it's true, but it seems that there's an understanding that something is happening there. So my final remark on these developments is this, and I thought it was a curious thing because I was watching that video and I was like, So when the media wants to investigate, when the investigative journalists want to do the karate on you, they will. They can draw spiderweb thingies. They can catch you on spy camera. They can leak emails. They can search your trash. Investigative journalists, when they're motivated, They can do a dossier on you proper, which made me ask myself this question. I'm going to ask you too. How come the reporting on people like Malcolm X and Brown Mokgotsi has been so low energy? I haven't seen spy videos for Brown Mokgotsi. I haven't seen anything. What's happening? Is it because those dots end up connecting to the high places that the media doesn't necessarily want to look at because maybe it destabilizes the GNU or goes to New Dawn places? Or is it because those individuals played the right game, contributed the right amount to the party, have their companies advertising in the publications, making people, lethargic in examining some of the stuff? I always wondered, all the corruption that Glencore did in Africa, African media houses were not reporting on it. They were not. But I was seeing Glencore adverts everywhere. Food for thought. I'll catch you in the comments. Let's talk about it.